Welcome to the National Women's Fitness Academy podcast. We're here to talk about women's health, female hormones, body image, and all things health and fitness.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Women's Fitness Academy podcast. I am one of your hosts, Elin. I'm also the founder of the Empowered Woman program, which is an online program for anyone who wants to overcome self-sabotage, all-or-nothing mindset, and anxiety. Today, I'm here with someone who is an educator for Women's Fitness Academy. You might have attended one of her workshops in the past. She's also a gym owner, and her name is Jessica Dickson. And I'm super excited to have you on, Jessica.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. So for the people who don't know you, who don't know your journey, don't know who you are, could you give us a little introduction of how you got into the industry and what it is that you specialize in?
Yeah, cool. Good question. So I didn't start out in the fitness industry. I did a double degree of business and psychology, and I did the whole corporate stuff for a period of time. And then I found bodybuilding and then did a couple of bodybuilding comps and realized that fitness was something that I actually really wanted to invest more time in. So I literally just listened to about 1,000 YouTube things whilst on my corporate job. And then I got my cert 3 and 4, and then started shadowing a couple of trainers in the area. I got a job at a local group fitness facility, and not a franchise one, just a smaller one. And then over the years progressed into a different gym. COVID happened, and that was kind of my catalyst where I would say I let go of my full-time job with the government. I started a full-time job as an online coach for a company that did a lot of coaching for a general population around Australia. And then I got approached by my now partner to help run his gym in Brisbane, which is an all-female gym at the time. And that's kind of how I got into things. And then we recently bought a gym up on the Sunshine Coast. We sold our gym in Brisbane, and now we're doing, I'm all-time fitness and running a gym.
Amazing. So wait, how many gyms do you have now?
So we have the one now. We had 2 for a period of time, and we realized that, in all honesty, finding good coaches is quite hard. I don't know if it's hard in other states, but Queensland that want to invest in that kind of stuff was quite challenging. So we found that we couldn't staff the second gym, our baby, if we'll call it, the all-female gym. So we sold it to some really good friends, which is fantastic. So they're continuing on the gym. There's been no changes. It was the perfect transition. So now we just have the one gym up on the coast, which is a larger facility. It was also a good I'll say lifestyle transition, because we've got a 1-year-old as well. So it was a kind of a lifestyle sort of move too.
Amazing. So you mentioned that you used to be in corporate and psychology and stuff, which is, I think, super interesting. Is something that I specialize in as well. Obviously, I'm not a psychologist, but I love the mindset stuff side of things. What made you make the change from going from being in the corporate world into, you mentioned bodybuilding? What was it about bodybuilding that you liked so much?
Well, I started doing, I would say, your normal fitness stuff. I did a boot camp at a local place, and I won their 6-week challenge. And I was like, hey, I actually like this. I'm actually pretty good at this. And then I reached out to a local coach after seeing a good friend of mine do a comp, which used to be INBA, before it's now, I think it's now ICN. And I was like,
okay.
Yeah.
I have no clue of what they are called, but I remember when it was INBA when I first moved to Australia.
2013, 2014, I'm showing my age here. Reached out to a coach, a local coach, and then I did my first comp within 12 weeks. In other words, I just got really skinny in 12 weeks. And then I won my first, it wasn't the INBA show, but I won one of the first side shows, and then placed really well in the second show. And then went to nationals and won the novice comp, and then came second and open. And I was like, okay, I found my thing. I'm loving it, and I love being on stage. I love the process involved in bodybuilding, as opposed to necessarily the looks that came with it. It was it was focused. I was driven. There was just a vision. I was like, this is my thing. Like I frothed everything about it. And then what I actually learned from that process and how that can relate to other areas of my life as well. And then did obviously a series of comps over the period of time. I got my pro card after doing it for 2 years, like one of their first pro shows, and then transitioned into IFBB and going through that and then learning the psychology around what's needed, but then what can happen if it goes wrong. In terms of the aftermath of competing or what people do competing for, and then understanding there was a huge gap between people who were competing and then I would say the general population. Like, how can I bridge the gap between the necessities to be a bodybuilder and how that relates to your general pop people? So not necessarily making them bodybuilders, but the psychology involved, the level of dedication. That's kind of how I transitioned into being a coach for, let's just say, your average Jane walking down the street. Those pretty much who I used to work with and how I could help those individuals. And that's kind of how I sort of fell into it. And then the lack of fulfillment in the corporate job, and I would say the lack of growth potential for myself, for something that I could control. Like, I'm type A personally, I like to control everything. And I really wanted to either own my own business or have something for my own, as opposed to being like a number on someone else's radar. And that's kind of why I transitioned. It took me a good 2 years to say, hey, no, I'm gonna quit, because like a government job is good. Like, you're getting good pay, you don't have to do much work, you got all the benefits. So for me to give that up, and also having parents in your ear being like, you've got a good stable job, like you've worked so hard for this, I'm just like, no. So it took a while to transition. But I haven't looked back. But yeah, it did. If you're in this right now and you're thinking, oh, should I leave my job? Should I do this? It took me 2 years to make the decision. So don't feel like it's an easy one.
Yeah, no, it definitely is hard, and it's a lot of like safety as well. And like, as anyone with their own business, and especially online, like we never really know how much money that's going to come in that week or that month. Like, it is hard. I was just talking to a client this morning, and she had like a really low week this week. She was stressing out, and then that's normal. Like, we're going to have those weeks as well, and we just have to keep showing up.
Yeah, and particularly like owning a business, there is no steady income unless you're like, obviously depends on the individual, but you just don't like do minimal work and then you just get a paycheck. Like, you have to work, you have to set yourself up to be able to earn that say weekly paycheck that comes in there. And I think there's a glorification of online coaching at the moment, where you can just be an online coach and get all this money, when one, you need to have a brand. Two, people need to understand that you can provide them with benefit. And then three, you got to work like a lot more than you think you do. Like, going from a 9 to 5 to like literally like a 23 8-hour day, like, it's just ridiculous. You never turn off until you reach a point where you have built up that brand and built up that, let's just say, baseline where you don't have to worry about it anymore. So that was a big shift, that there isn't consistency in that, but I know that I will outwork anyone. So that's probably why I've been able to, I would say, stay head above water, and just being consistent. Like, sales and marketing are far undervalued when you're going through your PT stuff. Like, you can learn how to do a squat and teach people how to do a squat, but if you can't sell yourself, then that's going to be an issue for you. And that was a big transition for me, because I didn't have a sales mentality, and I had to change that, being like, hey, it's a helping mentality. You're helping someone improve themselves, and that like, fortunately, they have to pay you for it.
Yeah, for sure. And yeah, I agree. I think it's something that is very missing, and that's something that we're very good at Women's Fitness Academy, having a lot of business coaches on both our hub and an education platform. And if you have been to the retreats as well, we do really push on that. But yeah, I definitely agree. Like, when I did all of my qualifications, there's nothing really about like how you get your first client and how to set up a payment system. And like, I remember when I first started out, I literally had to get everyone, like, people just bank transferring me every week $25 or something like that I charged for online coaching. And like, me following up, emailing, remember to transfer me money this week.
I would say more so back then. So this is like 2013.
Yeah.
It wasn't that part of the education involved. It was just like, how do you assess someone? How do you coach someone or a class? And it's like, okay, bye. And then that's when I find your big box gyms also then provide that level of education too. So like your Good Lives and that kind of stuff. They have PT managers that help with that, but probably not to the scale that's needed. It's like, here's a gym floor, go and talk. And if you're really good at coaching an individual, you may lack the skill from the business side of things. And like, to be in the fitness industry, you need to be, to an extent, or it depends on the individual as well, you got to know like how to sell yourself, and you got to know how to sell your services and your worth to someone, because no one's like, you could be the most knowledgeable person in the world, and to be honest, a lot of coaches in the world will far outweigh the knowledge you probably get from the ones that are really big on social media, because that's not their skill, that's not their forte. Their skill is being a coach, but no one knows who they are. So that's kind of where the disparity, I think, was within, or currently is within the industry, is to say, hey, you need to know how to sell yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. And I also think, like, because we get into this industry because we are so passionate about, like, we love it, we love helping people, we love getting people results, and it's very easy to undersell yourself and be like, no, it's okay, like, don't pay me for this time, it's okay, like, you have kids and someone's sick and you lost your job, oh, it's okay, like, you don't have to pay me this week, it's fine.
Yeah.
I know, I definitely fell into that trap.
Okay, and like, well, I think so. That's always a case on case situation, because I still have that even in the gym, because like you want to keep the clients and that builds rapport. But when it becomes out of hand, like, you need to have their things on file to create a debit system. Otherwise, they're not going to pay, or they're not going to turn up. Anything else. And you'll learn, like, you get burned for people turning up and they're not paying you, or they'll miss, lots of sessions and they won't pay you for it because they didn't come, but that's essentially your time as well. And I think
money.
Oh, but particularly if you've put out that time where it could be a potential other client, and having a cancellation period took me a long time to, I would say, have the courage to implement as a PT first, and then as a business owner for the gyms. Because if they get away with it more than, like, say 3 times, like a 3-strike rule, then they'll be charged for it, and they're on, because people don't value your time, and it's essentially, that's your livelihood. Like, and that's where I would say the disparity is, people become too kind. I'm like, well, no, this is like your money on your kitchen table, as an example. So, like, if you're listening to this and you're in that sort of phase of like, oh, you're not really too sure, like, implement a 24-hour thing. People will respect it. They'll respect you more because you're setting boundaries as well, and it will make them turn up. Then it's like, oh, I'll just, I'm not really being held accountable. Well, no, you paid for it, or take money in advance. That's probably been the really big game changer from an accountability perspective, but also as a I would say, quote unquote, business owner as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And people value things that are expensive or that they have to pay for. It's like, if someone gives you a meal that costs $200, or if someone gives you a free meal, it's like the free meal, you're probably just gonna be like, nah, it's okay, like, I might not eat it. But that $200 meal, you're gonna be like, I'm gonna enjoy every single little bite of this because it's expensive.
100%. Like, imagine, like, if you go through your phone or also your Instagram, you look at all the saved things on your Instagram, that would be like so much. If you were to convert that into like actions, like, it's a similar thing. Like, people they will save things, or they'll put things on the back burner, but if they're actually not held accountable to like doing that or reviewing that or whatever it is, then they're not going to do it. So the more buy-in you get, like paying up front, that kind of stuff will definitely help you from, I would say, that mentality. But then it's accountability thing as well, and that's what we're in the business for. Like, a lot of people just want to be held accountable turning up.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that clients really respect boundaries as well, because they like to know when they can contact you, when they can expect to hear from you. If you don't want to work Saturdays and Sundays, tell them, I'm not going to work on Saturday and Sunday. I'm not going to reply to your message. I will reply within 24 hours or 48 hours or whatever time limit you want to give them. And I've never, like, ever since I started having strict boundaries of, you have to cancel your call with me like at least 24 hours before if you want to be able to reschedule. You cannot expect me to reply Saturdays and Sundays. I will reply back between 24 hours. These boundaries, people are just like, that's great. That made me feel really safe. Now I know what to expect. Because that's the worst thing, coming in as a new client to a new coach and like, oh, when is she going to reply? Like, oh, it's Saturday, or why has she not replied yet? Like, if you know, you're like, yeah, I know that.
Yeah, 100%. And then, like, that would also then save them from getting annoyed when you don't reply, because there is that there. Because I've got online clients as well, and they'll message, like, they know they get the check-ins on Wednesdays, so I give them their check-in. They complete the form on a Sunday, I do it on a Wednesday, because I think everyone needs like a midweek motivation. So they'll know that I won't review that till Wednesday, and if I message them, it'll be on like a Monday or a Friday. Anything outside of that depends on the individual, and but like I'm pretty lenient. But if they don't hear from me, they know why.
Yeah,
but setting it, and you can run yourself into the ground, particularly if you're starting to build up your client base, and then you just can't keep a track of everyone. So it saves one, you getting annoyed and frustrated because you got a million people messaging you, and then they understand expectations.
Yeah, for sure. Boundaries are super important, and I think you mentioned before, paying up front is so good as well. Like, now I just fall back to the time when I first started off, and I used to be like, hey, you were still on me for 2 weeks ago when I did that check-in for you. It's like, oh god, the things we've done in the past.
Yeah, I think if anyone is like wanting to either like open a facility or they're wanting to expand their online, having like that direct debit system, like treat your online business like you own a physical facility, like have debit systems that are in place that are, as opposed to like, oh, I'll just transfer. Like, no, I have a debit system, and be really upfront with that.
Also for tax purposes, you're going to need that stuff.
Yeah, obviously some cash is okay sometimes, but that's obviously an earnings issue too. But what I found was going from being a trainer and a coach to owning a facility, and then also doing that with coaching, is a really big shift in skills. And I think I wasn't prepared for it. Like, I was, but I also wasn't, because I did the corporate world, so I kind of understood that. Well, I would say other things needed for that, but anyone, like I would say, wanting to transition into owning a facility, it is a very, very different ball game. You become more of a like a manager than a coach. Like, you have to step away from your coaching specialty to an extent to understand, I would say, how to run a facility, and how to coach coaches, how to deal with accountants and tax purposes and all that kind of stuff that's involved within that as well. And you've got to learn more about business. Otherwise, you won't be as successful as you are if you're just by yourself.
Yeah, for sure. Has your business changed at all since you started, or has it kind of always just been the same?
Or as in like my personal business, or the gyms?
Both.
Yeah, definitely, because I didn't have any idea what I was doing to start with. And then, okay, I've only ever been a part of small businesses, as opposed, from a fitness side of things. So in terms of how it's changed, definitely understanding the client's journey and how that is portrayed to an individual. So I've said the communication skills within that. Gyms are slowly changing, so incorporating the technology that is, I would say, growing with the time. So ensuring everyone has access to an app. There is nutrition and accountability involved as well, because obviously with the growth of online coaches and owning facilities, there's big disparity. Like, what's the difference of just coming to a gym now that there is such a large, I would say, number, and the growth of online coaching has definitely, I would say, changed our business, and the fact that you have to offer that a little bit more to keep people, I would say, more engaged, more accountable, as opposed to just particularly for, I would say, a group facility, because it's obviously a lot more expensive than going to a $10, $15, 24/7 gym. So ensuring that the client experience is extremely high, and ensure attention to detail. Like, we have a semi-private coaching facility, so small groups, as opposed to like a 30 people thing. It's like 12 people. So our attention to detail is quite high. So I definitely think over the last couple of years, the experience has to be like on point. The results have to make sure that people are, I would say, educated on the results as well, because just turning up isn't just going to cut it anymore. So from that perspective, I think it's definitely changed. And then I think it's changed also because the more knowledgeable I get, the more courses I do, the more mentors I seek out, will then also change how I run the business as well, and how that impacts on like how I hire and coach new coaches as well, and giving back to new coaches as well. So we had a student from the fitness academy that came to us in our Brisbane gym, and how we can give back and actually coach them how to run a session well, how to look at different people's let's just say, abilities in terms of training, because not everyone moves the same. So how do you assess that? How do you adjust that in a group setting? Well, with what we do. Not all gyms do that, but that's kind of how I think it's been changed a lot since we've grown, which has been pretty cool. Definitely stressful, but it's definitely grown.
Yeah, all business is very stressful, and yeah, like you said at the start, it's funny how we think like, oh, I'm gonna have my own business and like I'm just gonna go to the beach and sit at cafes and chill. Like I've never worked this much in my whole life.
I still work out at cafes, don't get me wrong.
Yeah, I still do that, but yeah. But then it's like, okay, well, you're working when you're in the cafe, you're working when you're at the beach, you're working when you're in bed. Like it's just
like you have to be jack of all trades for like a good minimum of 2 years and understanding all of the things. And then outsource that or get people involved in how to either be a coach with you or outsource those things, so you don't have to be on all of the time.
Yeah.
As you start to go into that, if you wanted this to be a full-time thing, then that is something. I say full-time online plus face-to-face. If it's just face-to-face, maybe not as much. But from this perspective, yeah, you kind of have to be on, I would say, most of the time until you've got a team where you've got a solid base of systems and clients and stuff like that.
And just really being consistent, guys. Like I think a lot of I get a lot of people reach out to me and they're like, yeah, I've been posting, like started my business 3 months ago and no one signed up. And like it is hard to get clients, especially now. Like when I first started, I got my first 2 clients within the first like 2 minutes. Like it was just like bam. But that was 5-6 years ago now. Like things have changed and it's gonna be a lot harder to get your first online clients now than it was 5-6 years ago.
Yeah, you're always going to be needed. I think the rise of AI has sort of freaked out a lot of people, but you're always going to be needed. But people have to know who you are, and which means you have to, well, from an online coaching perspective, you have to have an online presence. And not only that, your content has to, one, resonate with the clients that you want, and two, you have to like actually ask them to work with you. You can't just post content. Like you have to make sure there's call to actions in your posts. But it's definitely not as easy as it used to be to get clients. One, because there's, like, I swear every single person on Instagram now is an online coach. But two, you have to show your point of difference through your socials. And sometimes it's going to take you maybe like 6 to 12 months to even get like a solid, let's just say, Instagram feed. For then people to look on your page and like, oh yeah, she knows what she's talking about. Because if you're quite new and you've got maybe like say 20 posts, they're like, oh, maybe she's new. I might find someone who's been doing this for a little bit longer, and then find someone else. So it definitely takes a while to build up that brand. And I find that once you have like if you're an online coach, a personal brand is very important to start with. And then you start making, well, because people, you got to give them value. You've got to show that you know what you're talking about. Be a product of your product sometimes as well, or at least have clients that are a product of your product.
Absolutely. And it's a lot about building that trust, because when people are coming to you, like if you're listening to this podcast, I'm gonna assume that you're interested in health and fitness. That's probably what you're gonna be coaching. And that's something that's quite wonderful for people. Like it takes a lot to open up and be like, hey, like I'm not happy, I want to change my nutritionist, there's something wrong, or something with my training, I'm gonna change my body, I want to lose weight, I'm not happy with how I look, whatever the reason is. But that takes a lot. And if you only have like 3 or 4 posts saying like, hey, I'm an online coach now, or like these are what macros are, like they're not going to trust you, they're not going to want to buy from you because they can find that information on Google. Like that's easy. You need to actually build your brand, like Jessica said, and put in that work. And it is freaking hard until you start getting that momentum going.
100%. Like my partner runs a online consulting business for online coaches, funnily enough. And so I hear the struggles that they have, and obviously we work with them as well. And it's always a similar thing. So imposter syndrome is a huge one, because, you need to have, like, people don't think they're good enough. And then 2, understanding that, like, you have to, like, if you want to be an online coach, you have to have an online presence. Like, it's just, there's no way about it anymore. And then understanding, like, you're not going to be perfect. You just have to improve. Same as coaching your clients. Do what you're meant to do, post each day, be valuable, but then ask, obviously, for people to be your clients too. So there's so many more caveats than just being an online coach. Like you have to understand socials, You have to understand how to reach out to people, and then obviously do it in a non-steady way, and trust in yourself. Because I think imposter syndrome, particularly for me, was huge. Like, I still don't think I'm good enough to do some of the stuff. Like, I see some people's Instagram pages and I'm like, fuck, I know all that. Like, I know this, but I'm not prepared to put my ass on a picture to get attention. So that's my downfall. Or I struggle with my content side of things in putting across my worth. So when it comes to that kind of stuff, I understand if you're one of those people that it's a hard thing to get over. But once you do and you start showing, I would say we drop the barrier of if people are going to not like you or not, who cares? Like, they're not, like, they'll either scroll on or they'll unfollow you and they're not your people. Move on. And that took me a long time I would say, to get over. And I find that's particularly with online coaches, that's kind of something you need to sort of address with yourself and like back yourself. And that comes with business too. Like, I'm sure you're a pretty good coach. Show everyone else you're a pretty good coach because you know your shit. And there'll be online trolls out there and they'll be like, you don't know this or that's wrong. Okay. And if you are wrong, go and educate yourself on that.
Yeah, exactly. Like, you don't have to be afraid to say that you don't know or that you are wrong. Like, I say that all the time. Like, I actually don't know the answer to this. And people really respect that. They're like, yeah, okay, cool. Like, that's fine. Like, they don't expect you to be freaking God and know everything in the whole universe. Like, they ask because they have a question. If you don't know, then maybe you can point them in the direction of someone who does know about it.
Exactly. And then that comes into play across, I guess, most businesses. And if you don't know, then accept you don't know and go and learn, but don't like an ego and be like, oh, X, Y, and Z, I know this. Well, just like accept the fact that you don't know it and like go and
just make something up.
Like, be a student always. Like, I went to a workshop with a guy named Travis Mash on Tuesday, who's a phenomenal coach in the US for weightlifting. And I was just sitting there and I'm like, I am so dumb. Like, it was just talking all this stuff around like velocity-based training as an example. I was like, I don't know what this is. Like, I do at the same time. Like, okay, let's go back to the drawing board and all the things. So always be a student and that'll help you. But from a business perspective, just continually learn and continually apply those learnings more than anything else.
Yeah, for sure. I wanted to talk about the imposter syndrome that you mentioned, that you yourself struggle to put out certain posts and stuff like that. How, like, do you have any advice? Because I'm sure so many people would be able to resonate to this. Like, how do you get over that?
That's a really good question, because there's a lot of days I have that and I won't post stuff because I'm just like, oh, that's not a good enough piece of content. And sometimes it's just pulling the trigger and like it's okay to be not 100%. Like, if you're chasing perfection, you're never gonna get anything. It's just like, be that 1% better. And if you find like a reel for an idea, just post it straight away. Sometimes don't even think about it. Just put thought to action and then just do it.
Yeah.
And then if you don't get views and you don't get whatever, then use that as, okay, that didn't work. Or if you've got like a whole list of them, find out the ones that have worked. And then, okay, people really valued me for this content. I'm going to make similar content pieces. But from an imposter syndrome, it comes down to confidence. And if you know your stuff and you're still unsure about like putting that out, then that's something you really need to address with yourself and ask yourself, why am I always thinking I'm not good enough? Why am I always thinking that what I am knowledgeable in, people aren't going to have acceptance of, or they're not going to take me seriously or things like that? And to be honest, and understanding that a lot of people aren't going to listen to your content and resonate, and a lot of people aren't going to think it's good content, and that's okay, because there will be, like, let's say 1 in 100, if you've got like say 1,000 followers, that will, and it'll be those people that are your people. And I find that's starting to progress with me, because one, I don't like to post a lot of half-naked things. I like to post more value-based content. Obviously my journey in training as well, going from competing to gaining a lot of weight to get my period back, to having a child, like that whole journey through that, and not feeling worthy enough because I've been training since 2014. I don't look like I've been training for that long. And just been like, hey, this is me. Like, if you like it, you like it. And if you don't, you don't. That has definitely helped me the last sort of couple of years in understanding that's okay. But then if you start to get annoyed about it, go and learn more. go and look at the people that are doing it really well, and then prove to yourself, because no one else is going to make you feel better. You got to do that to yourself. And having mentors and friends and stuff like that help you, I would say, fulfill that part of you will also help. But you got to believe in yourself, because if you don't, you're not going to get anywhere, because people can tell you you're pretty all day long, but unless you believe it, it's not gonna resonate.
Yeah, exactly. It does stem back from yourself and from your own beliefs about you. And like I always talk about this like kind of like false sense of confidence that we can gain from weight loss, for example, when people are like, wow, like you lost so much weight, like you look amazing. And yeah, it feels really good when we hear that and we get all those, you get in the adrenaline, the dopamine, like, wow, like I'm feeling amazing. And then that's gonna drop, because that wasn't actually a natural high. That was just an external high that was triggered by other people saying that you were good enough. And if you don't actually believe it deep down, like you said, you're just gonna start feeling shitty again. And then that might make you feel like you need to lose more weight, or that now you put on weight and you're not getting any compliments. That means that you're not good enough, and it spirals.
And that's the always seeking validation for something, as opposed to self-validation, as opposed to something else. I'm so much more conscious in the language that I use now to my clients. Like if someone has come to me and they've lost a bunch of weight, they come to me to lose weight because they're like 100 kilos. They should be 100 kilos. They should be, roughly around, say between 70 and 80 for I would say a healthy body fat range. And they're unhappy. Like I'm all for, like, if you're 100 kilos and you're rocking yourself, fuck yeah, girl, you do you. I shouldn't swear. You do you. Like I'm all for empowerment within yourself. But if your joints are hurting, you're inflamed, and you really want to lose weight to do that, I'm still very conscious now, and they've lost weight. And I always ask, how do you feel about your progress this week? Not, oh my God, well done, you've lost 5 kilos, because I don't want to validate weight loss as achieving. I'm like, oh my goodness, you got 8 hours of sleep this week, 3 times in the week. Hell yeah. Or you monitored your food and you actioned the goal that you said you were going to get, as opposed to validating that weight loss. Because that happened to me. Like that's why I kept competing. That's not why I kept competing. That's why I would say wanting to be lean all year round was a big factor, because I got so much praise for the way that I looked. I was like, you look so good, you're nice and lean, like you can do all these things. And now I'm like, I want you to praise me for doing more than 5 pull-ups. Like, and then the language shift was probably the biggest change that I've made as a coach, more than anything else, is being rewarding things that will prolong success. Well done, you did all the things you set out to do this week, as opposed to well done, that resulted in weight loss.
Yeah, I love that so much. And I can resonate a lot with it as well. Like people who listen to this podcast will know that I have a history of having eating disorders myself. And a lot of it stem from it really got triggered when I was doing a bodybuilding. And that's how I got into CrossFit, actually, because I like you, I had to find something that actually, that focused on something that wasn't how I looked. And when I got my first pull up, like I'll never forget it, because I was like, I was so happy.
Like after having my little one, and because I had to gain probably 20 kilos to get my period back, and then I fell pregnant within 2 cycles, thank goodness. I was still like, I would say 20 kilos more than my frame had been used to. So not being able to pull up was really like, that was me. That was impactful. I didn't care what I weighed, but I was like, why can't I do a pull up? So the whole year I've spent trying to build those back up. And I went from doing none in January to now doing 5 in a row. I'm just like, yes. And that's but that's me as a person, that provides validation. Yep, that is me being a strong ass bitch.
Yeah. How did you deal with, you said you had to gain a lot of weight to gain your period back after competing. How did you deal with that? Because I can imagine that would have also given you a bit of like imposter syndrome, like people look at me like I'm a bodybuilder and look at me now gaining weight.
Man, that was a tough 2 years, from a mental capacity, because I'd always been lean and liked the way that I looked. Like from not necessarily being like comp lean, but before I sort of started this, I was enjoying I had a bit of fat on me. I could do I could go for a run and not ache. I could train. Like I was in such a great place, but I didn't have a period. So quote unquote healthy, but also not healthy. Throughout, I reckon 12 months, I didn't post one photo of myself. I didn't take photos of myself. I didn't do anything. I was like, no one is going to listen to me, because I am 75 plus kilos and I'm a coach. and I'm literally mostly fat. Huge imposter syndrome. I went into a happy but also unhappy, I would say, time in my life where, because I couldn't train as well, like I went through an all-in approach to get, I had hypothalamic amenorrhea from competing, but also long-term contraception, which is a chemical shitstorm. And then for me to not train to start off with, and then eat food I hadn't really been eating before, and then gain weight, like it was a necessary process, because I tried other ways of getting it back into work. So it was a necessary process. And at the time I was like, this is the most like horrible time, and I didn't think I was worth anything. I didn't take any photos, but now I look back now, I'm like, I'm glad I went through that process, because it's taught me a lot about myself, about acceptance of who I am. But it also taught me that my body was not a healthy, like my hormones were healthy, my body was not healthy. Like I had knee pain, I had ankle pain, my body felt like it was breaking. So it was such a weird disparity of being healthy for hormones, but my body, like I was so inflamed, it was ridiculous. Like it was a tough mental time, like extremely tough. But I got through it. And now I'm the same weight I was when I would say started, and slowly building up my muscle mass again, slowly building up that. But it really showed me, hey, I can be happy at a heavier weight. And it taught me a lot about that acceptance more than anything else. And how much training affects my mental health. If I don't train, man, you don't want to be around me.
Yes, I'm sure a lot of people can relate to that. But yeah, that's an incredible journey, and I think a lot of people can probably relate. I've heard a lot of people recently say that they're getting out of bodybuilding because they want to get the periods back, they want to have a healthy hormone function, and yeah, so I think that it's something that a lot of people probably can resonate to.
Yeah, it's periods are healthy, ladies. Like,
yes, they're not fun, but they're healthy.
Yeah, like I get mine, it's like, yes, well done.
Yeah. Well, Jessie, it's been such a pleasure talking to you. Before we go, I also wanted to give you the opportunity to give yourself a little plug. Like, are you taking on clients at the moment? Where can people find you? Do you have anything new coming up that people should know about?
Well, it's leading into the end of the year. So I probably I usually don't do a lot of stuff towards the end of the year, apart from what I've got right now, but definitely still taking on clients. I mainly go off Instagram. My handle is at Jester, so JESSTER __.
We'll link it in the show notes as well.
Yep. Thank you. And like I work with people who want to gain weight, lose weight, just want to be confident with themselves. I would say I will have a diverse range of clients. And obviously, if you're on the Sunshine Coast and you're looking for a place to train, come meet me. I'm more than happy to jump you into a session as well. But yeah.
Amazing. Well, girls, make sure you go check out her profile. And yeah, Jess, it's been such a nice time talking to you. And thank you so much for coming on. And thank you so much to everyone else for listening. And I will see you next week. Bye.